Welcome to Planning for Success, a webinar hosted by the National Center for College and Career Transitions. My name is Brett Pawlowski. I'm joined by my colleague, Joanne Hudak. This webinar is being conducted on behalf of the Pennsylvania Department of Education's Bureau for Career and Technical Education. So just a brief word about the National Center for College and Career Transitions, which we call NC3T, since it's much shorter. We're an organization focused on career-connected learning, and that plays out as through a two-part vision where every learner has a dream and a plan, and every community has a capable, ready workforce, which are really two sides of the same coin. We want to connect students to the workplace, working with schools, secondary and post-secondary level. We do that in a few ways. One is by working with school districts and on a regional basis to develop college career pathways models. We also do quite a bit of work around employer engagement, helping schools work effectively with employers and vice versa. And that is the spirit in which this webinar is being held. My name is Brett Pawlowski. As I mentioned, I am the co-founder and executive vice president of NC3T. I've been working on business education partnerships for almost 20 years now. A lot of that has come via consulting with businesses who want to understand education and work effectively with education, as well as work on the flip side, working with schools, districts, and state departments of education who want to learn how to engage employers effectively. It comes through technical assistance, it comes through workshops, it also comes through some of the publications that I've been involved in developing, such as Building Advisory Boards That Matter, which is a guide published by the Association for Career and Technical Education, and the Employer Engagement Toolkit, which is a guide offered by NC3T. It's a soup to nuts guide for anyone interested in working with employers effectively. I'll ask my colleague to introduce herself.
Yes, I'm Joanne Hudak. I'm currently working with NC3T on a number of capacities. I'm working with Brett with the WorkBased learning workshops and webcasts, also career pathway leadership forums across the state. Very exciting opportunities, and working on an online Pennsylvania-inspired leadership course for school leaders. Career Readiness Foundation for School Leaders will pilot this fall. It's a wonderful opportunity for school leaders to become more knowledgeable about the relationship between career readiness, the workplace, etc. So that's an exciting project. Recently retired public school administrator, and for well over a decade, I've been working with schools and school districts across Northeast Pennsylvania in helping them develop their K-12 guidance plans, bridging the gap between education, workforce, and economic development partners, and just supporting their efforts to bring meaningful and impactful career-connected learning to students. Today's agenda: we will be looking at building partnerships. In our previous webcast, we spoke about partnership models, and today we'll talk a little bit more about how to build those, planning for successful work-based learning experiences, setting up sequences and quality standards, and addressing legal issues, compliance issues, and providing you again with many good resources.
So whenever I talk with educators in career and technical education, whether those are in workshops or site visits or what have you, the most common thing that I hear is, I don't know how to find partners. I don't know anybody. And you hear this whether an educator is in their first year or if they've been doing this for 20 years, no one feels like they have the number of contacts or the quality of contacts that they need to build up a strong partnership program. And the reality is, even if you're a first-year teacher, even if you are brand new to a community, you have access to as many partners as you want if you change the way you think about partnership development. So rather than thinking about who you personally know, I would encourage you to think about the networks that you're a part of. And for example, your fellow educators and administrators. You are probably, like most teachers, involved in any number of staff meetings and district professional development days and other gatherings of your fellow educators, whether those are CTE teachers or your science teachers, your math teachers, your principals, your curriculum folks. You've got access to a whole building full of educators. All of those educators have husbands, they have wives, they have brothers and sisters, moms, dads, neighbors, other people they know in the community, some of whom are going to work in the fields that you're interested in. If you can take 2 minutes at a staff meeting or at a district meeting to say, look, I run a welding program, I'm looking for introductions to people who work in this industry, this industry, this industry, or I know that there's this major employer in town who knows somebody at that company. Ask your fellow educators and administrators who they know, who they can introduce you to. And that's an excellent bridge into the companies and the industries that you want to reach. The same is true for your vendors. If you're in a CTE program where you're buying equipment and buying resources, culinary, for example, carpentry, auto tech, you're probably buying from people who also sell to the businesses in your community. Ask your vendor reps who they know, who else they sell to, who they might be able to introduce you to. That is a big win for them, that they get a lot of credibility and sort of build up their social capital by connecting people, by making those introductions. So ask who else they sell to and if they can make introductions for you. Think about the parents of your current students. They have a huge vested interest in the success of their children. Some of those parents work in the industries that you're targeting. They might have neighbors again, or family members who do. Ask your parents for help connecting to industry. If you've been doing this for a few years, think about your former students. There is nothing more powerful than bringing a former student in who now works in the profession or the industry that you focus on to talk to current students. And those former students, if they're working in the field now, can introduce you to their employers, which is a great bridge because they serve as a personal endorsement of the value of your program, the outcomes of your program. Think about your advisory board. If you've got any business participation at all in the advisory board, one of their core roles should be to help you develop relationships in the industry. They're working in the industry, they know people within their own companies, they know people at other companies, they're involved in trade associations, labor unions, things like that. One of their core functions should be to introduce you to people. I serve on my son's advisory board. That is one of our core functions. Our job, or one of our jobs, is to set up internships and site visits and connect other employers to the program. So look to your advisory board and your current partners, whether they're on the advisory board or not. That is their job. They're there to help you prepare students for the workforce. So ask them to help you develop those relationships. Finally, think about those formal organizations, the Chamber of Commerce, the Trade Association, the Workforce Investment Board, the Economic Development Corporation. If you work in a unionized field, ask your local unions for connections. Those organizations exist to connect their members and develop those relationships across an industry or across a business community. So join those organizations, and not only just pay the dues, but go to the meetings. Show your face, make an effort to develop some relationships. And if there are subcommittees, if there's an education subcommittee, a economic development subcommittee, workforce committee, join those committees and make your face known. Ask the people who run those organizations for introductions. That's one of their jobs. Say that you want to meet the people in this business, this industry, who can they connect you to? And finally, ask if you can host a meeting, either of the entire group or the education committee. Ask if you can host a meeting on site at your program so that you can take people on a tour through the program, introduce them to students, introduce them to educators, and let them become familiar with the work you're doing. So if you take that friend of a friend model, that network model, you are tapped into a bunch of different networks, all made up of people who want to see you succeed. So leverage those relationships to see who they can connect you to in the community. You will very quickly find that you have a lot of potential partners out there through a friend of a friend strategy. So as we think about planning for success, I have seen in more than one case where business partners have not a lot of interest in working with students at the formative stages. They're focused on internships, they're focused on apprenticeships. And really that's true for business partners and for some education programs. They're focused very strongly on the very end stage work-based learning models. And I think if you take that approach, you might be setting yourself up for failure, or more importantly, setting students up for failure. I would encourage you to think about work-based learning and career preparedness in terms of a scope and sequence. Just as you've got a scope and sequence for instruction, where you try to get students to understand basic concepts and then you build on that, think about a scope and sequence for work-based learning. You don't want to have students in an entirely academic environment and then throw them in the deep end into an immersive experience like an apprenticeship or an internship or full employment, co-op opportunity, or just graduating and going to work. Think about the experiences that you want them to have, what a prepared intern or a prepared apprentice or a prepared employee looks like, and what it is that they need to do in 9th grade and 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade to build up not only the experiences and the knowledge, but also a history of success, gradually deepening their relationship with employers so they're very confident and prepared once they get to that immersive experience. So think very strongly about what a prepared intern or a prepared apprentice looks like. What knowledge do they need to have? What skills do they need to have? And those are their technical skills, but it's also their employability skills, the attitudes, behaviors. Do they have the grit? Do they know to show up on time? Do they know how to look somebody in the eye? Do they speak well? Think about what a good intern looks like, an impressive apprentice. And think about what it's going to take over the course of a few years to build up the learning experiences and the work-based learning experiences to get students to that point. And that's what I mean when I talk about building a scope and sequence for work-based learning, to make sure that you take them through the course of a few years to become that superior apprentice or that superior intern or that superior employee. So just think long-term about sort of just going up through the ranks through site visits, the guest speakers, deepening a little bit to job shadowing, going further with maybe a career mentor, externship, and just sort of the gradual scope of experiences to get them ready for that long-term immersive experience.
Okay, so when we're looking at preparing our students for, work-based learning experiences, we really want them to make it focused and related to their post-secondary planning. Far too often, some career-connected learning experiences are kind of randomly put together without that connection to the student's particular career awareness and career exploration. So we really always want to keep that in mind, that every experience should be related to their classroom experiences and their post-secondary transition planning. So in Pennsylvania, obviously with the new career readiness indicators, students will be required to have a career portfolio. Now that certainly can be a paper portfolio, but more and more districts are looking at electronic portfolios, not only for the wealth of information and ease of use, but the ability to take that, all of the experiences that are recorded and produce the reports needed for complying with the requirements of the PIMS system. So students generally in middle school create a career portfolio. There are great resources out there for you. PA Career Zone is a free resource from the Department of Ed. Career Cruising, Naviance, Bridges, there are many, many different products, and they really aren't that expensive. So prior to that work-based learning experience, if you remember thinking about the kindergarten to maybe 5th grade students who will focus on career awareness, learning about the world of work and careers, when the students hit that middle school level, they should really be assessing, using whatever inventories are available, their interests, their abilities, their personality. Many students think they want to work with technology, but the thought of sitting in front of one or two computer screens for 8 to 10 hours a day, once they experience that, that might not be the world of work that they are interested in. So it's, what am I good at? What do I like? What's my passion? And really then using that information to do exploration of potential careers, career pathways, career clusters. And then once they kind of find some careers they're interested in, really do some research on those careers. What is a day of work like? What are the employability possibilities? Sometimes students will say, I want to be a teacher and want to come back and teach in my home school district. Well, do some research first. Are there jobs available? And that can apply to almost any field. So they should discuss that with their school counselor before they even go out on a work-based learning experience. So they should plan that experience, whatever it might be, whether it's a site tour, a job shadow. And the really critical piece is that after that experience, the student is recording that experience in their career portfolio. They're reacting, what did I learn? What did I not learn? Or what did I like and not like? How did my experience relate to the work I've done with, researching careers? And what's next? What's the next step? That's really the important part. And particularly in Pennsylvania, where we will be providing evidence that the students are meeting the career readiness indicators, they must have, some type of reflective piece, even or a product, a writing, a presentation, whatever it might be after that experience. So when we're looking at work-based learning experience, we really want to think about the word quality, and we want to think about the word impactful. If a student goes out on a job shadowing, that's just kind of, I have to get a job shadowing in, while I'm in high school, and it's not connected to any of the work they've done or their post-secondary planning, it's really meaningless. And there's pretty good research out there, and even in Pennsylvania with our most recent student surveys through the PACE system, that students don't feel like they're getting career guidance in their schools. And that research is available at your school district level, but that's pretty much across the board. So we may be doing career-connected learning strategies and work-based learning, but are they high quality and are they impactful? And that's really, is it an experience or a quality experience? So keep that in mind as you develop your program. So it has to be very intentional and purposeful. So there must be the planning, all the work the student does, and then, the teacher or guidance counselor or coordinator, whoever's doing the planning with the student, is preparing before the event, and then that there is monitoring by that teacher during that work-based learning experience, and then a follow-up after the event, the reflection. So when we look at planning, how does this experience contribute to the student's long-term success? And when we talk about long-term success, we're talking about their post-secondary career plans. Whether that be a certificate program, associates, 4-year, how is this experience contributing to that student preparing to enter either the workforce or post-secondary education and training? So there must be clearly defined objectives for the experience. So before that experience, you're setting expectation with not just students, but the business partner and the staff. There must be written agreements, memorandums of understandings. Students must be prepared. What is the dress code? I think Brett mentioned earlier those skills of, a good handshake, eye contact, professionalism. Are they checking their cell phone all the way during the work-based learning experience? So all those things have to be discussed with the students in advance. Of course, there are always logistics, whether they're travel, who's doing what, who's taking the student, who's monitoring the student, and particularly safety. There are very clear guidelines for student safety in work-based learning experiences. During that experience, while the student is in an internship or a job shadowing, there should be check-ins with not just to see how the student is doing, with the employer, and redirect as needed, always with that big picture in mind of connecting everything, to the student's successful post-secondary career planning. And also think about what's the employer piece in this, because there should be a quality relationship there happening between the student and whoever is the site coordinator. Student must be reflecting, and again, I'll repeat that over and over again. Are they producing some type of work product? So are they creating a paper or a presentation? Are they developing some kind of a visual pamphlet, something related to their experience? Check in with the employer. With their testimonials, will the employer have a good experience? Are they willing to take other students? Can that job shadow be expanded into maybe a different department in that company, or perhaps an internship? So those things all happen after the work-based learning experience. And again, what you're doing is working through each stage to ensure student and partner success. We talk about keeping the employer engaged. You don't want to send a student to a bank and have them sit next to a teller for 8 hours. That's really not quality, and it's not impactful to either the student or the employee. Of course, we want to be very conscious of regulations and legal issues related to work-based learning experiences. So the guiding document for all school districts should be your Chapter 339 or your K-12 guidance plan, where you're aligning career-connected learning activities and strategies to the career education and work standards. And in that document should be spelled out exactly what work-based learning experiences take place, when and where, how, and so on and so forth. You should have a properly certified cooperative education teacher if you have cooperative education programs, diversified occupations, overseeing the work sites and making those employer connections. There are clearance requirements in Pennsylvania. They are spelled out in a resource that we provide at the end of the presentation. And the employers, whoever will be the point of contact working most closely with the student, will be required to get a set of clearances. There has been some confusion with this, where there was a thought that everyone in the company would have to get clearances, and all of that is spelled out in the resource we'll provide later in the presentation. Of course, you want to be conscious of labor law. If there's an internship, wage requirements. There are things that kids cannot do, students can't do if they're under 18. Examples, using a mechanical lift, a tire changer, etc. You always want to make sure that liability, whether that's your insurances, working with your business manager, your HR department, and above all, student safety. What are the transportation requirements? Are the students driving themselves, or is there someone in the district transporting the student? And of course, working closely with your special education department to make sure that you're meeting transition goals for our special needs students. The school coordinator responsibility, they have a lot to do here. They're looking at, matching the employers for our work-based learning experience. And really an important piece is having an employer orientation. There really has to be a clear understanding of their role in the work-based learning experience, their responsibilities. The school coordinator is also engaging students in learning what they're interested in, and then trying to match that interest with the correct employer and site setting. There should always be, as we mentioned earlier, safety in the workplace, all of the things that have to happen before the experience, MOUs, agreements, etc. Work-based learning training plans we'll talk about in a minute, those evaluations, site visits, and really writing the learning objectives with input from the employer and, of course, the students. Very important that there are work-based learning training plans established for every student for their experiences, because that document will ensure that it will spell out what are the specific learning objectives that should happen during that work-based learning experience. It will document exactly what they will learn and what they will do. And it serves also for a guide for the student and the work site supervisor, and there should be an evaluation piece in that also. And what's really important is that the student supervisor, all have input into really establishing those learning objectives to make it a high quality and impactful experience for the student and employer. And Brett had mentioned these earlier, but in that work-based learning training plan, the objectives should help them grow in those 4 areas that Brett went into a little bit more deeply. Tremendous resources for you as you develop your high quality work-based learning experiences and plans. I highly recommend the toolkits that are on this page. They provide not only detailed descriptions of every type of work-based learning experience, but they also provide templates and forms, just lots and lots of good resources for you to either develop or enhance your existing program. I mentioned about the clearances earlier. We have a link here to employees having contact with children that should answer any of those questions you may have. Pennsylvania PDE also has great resources for developing your 339 or K-12 guidance plan. And there are very, very detailed, great resources on PDE website on cooperative education. So we thank you for joining us today and hope we provided you with some information to help you develop your high quality work-based learning experiences for students. So we thank you.
Thank you.